In a place where winter can feel endless and supply trucks are little more than a dream, food storage isn't just practical, it's critical. The Inuit, living across the frozen northern landscapes, have developed preservation techniques so effective that some of their foods can last not just months, but years. No electricity, no refrigeration, just knowledge, patience, and a climate that helps more than it hurts. Here are 10 foods they store that never expire, each one a brilliant example of how ingenuity, tradition, and the Arctic environment come together to defy spoilage. Let's start with seal oil, often referred to as the lifeblood of the Inuit diet. This isn't your everyday cooking oil. It's a nutritional powerhouse with a shelf life that puts store-bought pantry staples to shame. Rendered carefully from blubber, seal oil is created through a slow, deliberate process. Chunks of fresh seal fat are gently heated until the pure oil begins to separate, a method that requires not just time, but skill honed over generations. Once collected, the oil is stored in traditional seal bladders or modern airtight containers. But the magic isn't in the container, it's in the rendering. The removal of water and impurities makes it nearly impossible for spoilage to set in. A properly made batch of seal oil can sit for decades and still be safe to eat. That's longer than most frozen pizzas last in your freezer, and far more useful in the Arctic. The oil is more than just a way to cook or preserve. It's used as a dipping sauce for dried meat and fish. Imagine jerky that's been hanging around for 6 months suddenly coming alive, again with flavor and moisture. All thanks to a golden drop of this liquid fat. Rich, oily, and slightly nutty in flavor, seal oil brings dried foods back to life. Nutritionally, it's loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, more potent than most commercial fish oils. While wellness enthusiasts today spend a small fortune on the capsules from health stores, the Inuit have been reaping the benefits the traditional way, dipping, cooking, and preserving with it long before nutritionists gave it their stamp of approval. It also plays a key role in survival. A single ounce can deliver hundreds of calories, making it a fuel source for both the body and even lamps. Families traditionally render and store up to 20 gallons per season, enough to light their homes, cook their food, and keep them alive through the long polar night. Then there's Arctic char, often dubbed the jerky of the north. Caught during their seasonal migration, these salmon-like fish are sliced, cleaned, and hung in the open air to dry. No spices, no preservatives, and definitely no plastic packaging. The cold air and Arctic wind do all the work, drawing out moisture and leaving behind leathery strips of protein-rich meat. The final product? Tough at first bite, it softens as you chew, releasing an intense, slightly sweet flavor that's uniquely Arctic. Combine it with a dip of seal oil, and you've got a traditional combo that survived centuries of storms and scarcity. Inuit food preservation isn't about convenience, it's about outsmarting the cold. And this is just the beginning. From fattened fish to fermented meats and even preserved berries, the Arctic pantry is full of surprises that never expire. If you're enjoying this video, hit that red subscribe button. It's free, quick, and helps more people discover Arctic stories like this. Your support keeps this channel going. While most of us toss out moldy bread by the end of the week, there's a loaf in the Arctic that might outlast your car lease. It's called Banic, a hard-baked survival bread that earned its place in Inuit history, not for being soft or sweet, but for being virtually indestructible. Imagine bread with a concrete-like texture and the shelf life of a legend. What makes Banic so eternal? It's the simplicity. No eggs, no dairy, no yeast, just flour, fat, water, and a pinch of salt. The absence of perishable ingredients means there's nothing in it to spoil. Add to that a long, slow bake until all moisture is gone, and you've got a loaf that defies time. This isn't the kind of bread you slice with ease. Fresh out of the oven, it's firm. Leave it for a few weeks and it could stop a small animal in its tracks. But the trick lies in reviving it. A dunk in hot tea or a brush of seal oil softens the texture, making it palatable once again. Some even use steam from cooking pots to coax life back into it. It may not win awards for flavor, but it wins every survival contest. Scientists who studied traditional Banic found moisture content so low it rivals military rations. And that's the point. It's not about pleasure, it's about endurance. In a land where food is life and winter is always coming, Banic is a brick of edible security. But the Arctic pantry isn't all dense and dry. It has its sweet moments too, thanks to a clever trick involving berries and oil. While we preserve fruit with sugar, boiling, and vacuum sealing, the Inuit had none of those luxuries. Instead, they used seal oil once again, this time as a preservation medium for summer's rare and short-lived berry harvest. During the brief tundra bloom, families gather crowberries, cloudberries, and even the occasional blueberry. The berries are cleaned and gently mixed with rendered seal oil, then stored in traditional pouches, once made from clean animal stomachs, now often swapped for glass jars or containers. The seal oil creates an airtight barrier around each berry, locking in freshness and blocking out oxygen. The result? Berries that stay intact for months, even years, without refrigeration. They retain their natural tartness and texture, but carry a rich, savory depth from the oil, almost like nature's twist on fruit preserves. And they're more than a snack. They're a rare source of vitamin C during the frozen months when scurvy would otherwise pose a threat. Preserved berries were more than food. They were medicine in disguise. Families might store 40 pounds or more to last through winter. The oil didn't just protect the fruit, it nourished the body and elevated a simple ingredient into a life-saving treat. These foods weren't created for convenience. They were created to conquer hunger, sickness, and isolation, using only what nature allowed. They're reminders that in a land where nothing grows for most of the year, innovation becomes instinct, and survival becomes an art. In most kitchens, the word fermented might bring to mind yogurt, kombucha, or perhaps a nice sharp cheese. In the Arctic, it brings something much bigger, literally. We're talking about walrus, and not just any walrus. Fermented walrus meat, known traditionally as Iunach, represents one of the most daring and complex preservation methods the Inuit have ever practiced. At first glance, the process might sound reckless to outsiders. Bury raw chunks of meat and fat in the ground and let nature do the rest. But that's a shallow view of what's really a carefully controlled technique, one honed over generations and requiring deep knowledge, precise timing, and trust in the environment. It starts with the hunt. During summer, when walrus are more accessible, hunters butcher the animal, separating out large slabs of meat and fat. These are wrapped tightly, often in the walrus's own hide, and buried in stone caches or directly into permafrost zones. The goal? Create an oxygen-free environment where specific microbes can go to work, gently fermenting the meat over the course of 3 to 6 months. Inside those buried bundles, the magic begins. The anaerobic conditions prevent dangerous bacteria from taking hold. Meanwhile, cold temperatures slow the process just enough to keep it safe while still encouraging transformation. When the meat is finally unearthed, it's softer, more pungent, and intensely flavorful, if you're brave enough to try it. The aroma, strong, the texture, buttery and smooth, the flavor, savory, with a sharp tang that's definitely not for everyone. But for the Inuit, this is more than just food. It's a delicacy, often saved for community gatherings or gifted to elders as a gesture of deep respect. Still, Iunach isn't without risk. If the process is done incorrectly, it can lead to dangerous illnesses like botulism. That's why fewer than 1 in 5 modern Inuit report knowing the full traditional technique. The skill is passed down carefully, often from elder to grandchild, with a reverence usually reserved for ceremonies. Despite its dangers, Iunach remains a testament to Arctic resilience. While other cultures fermented milk or grains, the Inuit dared to apply the process to one of the toughest meats in one of the coldest places on Earth. And the result is a powerful mix of preservation, tradition, and nutritional necessity. But not every survival food in the Arctic pushes your taste buds to their limit. Sometimes the humble, everyday solutions are just as brilliant, like dried caribou strips. If Iunach is the Arctic's bold experiment, dried caribou is its quiet, reliable classic. Caribou meat is lean, abundant, and, when preserved correctly, virtually immortal. Hunters slice the meat into long, thin ribbons and hang them out to dry in the cold northern wind. No smoke, no salt, just air and time. The result is a chewy, protein-packed snack that's portable, lightweight, and full of flavor. For Inuit travelers, these meat strips are lifesavers, tucked inside clothing to stay warm and ready to eat on the go. They snap when fresh, soften as you chew, and carry a whisper of wild herbs and lichen from the caribou's natural diet. A kind of trail mix made by nature, minus the nuts and raisins. As we move forward, the story of Arctic food preservation takes a turn toward fat, an ingredient once feared in the modern world, but revered in the frozen north. Because when the air bites at your bones and the snow never stops falling, fat becomes more than food. It becomes fuel. In a climate where just stepping outside can start to drain your body of energy, food isn't just about flavor, it's about fuel, and no fuel burns longer or hotter than fat. While trendy diets may debate it, and nutrition labels may warn you about it, in the Arctic, rendered animal fat has long been a cornerstone of survival. The Inuit knew this long before science caught up. Take caribou fat, for example. It doesn't look like much, soft, white, and dense, but its importance can't be overstated. After a successful hunt, the fat is carefully trimmed from around the kidneys and back, then chopped into small chunks. These pieces are slowly heated over a gentle flame until they liquefy, leaving behind a clean oil and removing any tissue or impurities. This process is known as rendering, and the result is a substance called sweat, a firm, shelf-stable block of pure energy. It cools into a nearly scentless, pale white fat that resists spoilage and can be stored without refrigeration. No mold, no rancid smell, no need for vacuum-sealed packaging, just clean, concentrated calories in their most potent form. 1 ounce of rendered caribou fat can pack around 250 calories, more than double what you'd get from the same weight of protein or carbohydrates. For people trudging across icy plains or enduring long hunting expeditions, this was the ultimate power snack. Modern protein bars wish they had this kind of efficiency. Traditionally, suet was stored in cleaned lengths of caribou intestine or tucked into handmade hide pouches. These natural containers provided insulation and protection, allowing the fat to last for months on end, even when temperatures fluctuated. It was eaten plain, mixed with dried meat into a high-energy paste, or blended with berries for a rare sweet treat. In a pinch, it could even be used to fuel lamps. This wasn't just fat, it was Arctic dynamite disguised as food. But the genius of Inuit survival didn't stop with meat and oil. Their ingenuity extended to nature's medicine cabinet as well, particularly the birch tree. When frostbite nipped at the skin and muscles ached from long treks, there was one cure that offered both comfort and relief: Birch Bark Tea. It may sound simple, but this drink has ancient roots and real healing power. Harvesters collect strips from the outer layer of white birch trees, taking care not to harm the living tissue beneath. The bark is dried and stored in cool, dry spaces, needing nothing fancy. No jars, no refrigeration, just patience and a shelf. When steeped in hot water, birch bark releases salicylates, compounds similar to those found in aspirin. The tea that results is warm, golden, slightly sweet, and gently soothing. It eases pain, lowers fevers, and acts as a mild diuretic. For communities without access to pharmacies or painkillers, this drink was a lifeline. Even more impressively, archaeological evidence shows that variations of birch bark tea have been brewed for over 5,000 years across the Northern Hemisphere. It's not a fad or trend, it's survival science, passed down through generations of observation and necessity. And while today's health gurus may sell $12 detox teas with flowery labels, the Inuit had their version long before labels existed, just tree bark, boiling water, and an intimate understanding of nature. When the land freezes solid and the sun disappears for weeks, the sea becomes more than a boundary. It becomes a lifeline. While most of the Arctic rests under snowdrifts and silence, the coastal waters teem with resources. And one of the most overlooked survival staples found here is dried kelp. Thin, dark, and crinkled, it might not look impressive at first glance, but don't let appearances fool you. This seaweed is a nutritional juggernaut and one of the most reliable foods in the Inuit pantry. Before the rest of the world caught on to the idea of seaweed as a superfood, Arctic communities were already collecting, drying, and storing kelp with expert precision. The harvest is a seasonal ritual. During low tide in spring and summer, Inuit gatherers head to rocky coastlines to search for clean, healthy specimens. They know what to look for: young, unbroken blades from waters that haven't been contaminated or disturbed. Once collected, the kelp is rinsed in fresh water to remove excess salt. Then it's laid out across flat rocks or hung from wooden racks. In a matter of days, the Arctic wind and sunlight do their job, transforming wet, slippery seaweed into crisp, paper-thin sheets. These dried layers are then bundled and tucked into cloth sacks or baskets. No fancy storage methods required, no preservatives, no jars, and certainly no refrigeration. And what's inside those brittle leaves? More nutrition than you might expect. Kelp contains more calcium by weight than milk, more iron than spinach, and it's especially rich in iodine, a nutrient absolutely critical for thyroid function, particularly in regions where it's scarce. Just one dried sheet can contain up to 10 times the daily recommended amount of iodine. But dried kelp isn't just valuable for what it offers on its own. It plays multiple roles in food preservation. Some Inuit communities have traditionally used it as a wrapping material to store other foods like dried fish or meat. The kelp's natural saltiness and antimicrobial properties help extend the shelf life of whatever it surrounds. In the kitchen, it's incredibly versatile. Dried kelp can be crumbled into soups, softened into stews, or even ground into a seasoning powder that adds a salty, umami kick to almost anything. And yes, it can be eaten straight, crackly, salty, and surprisingly satisfying for something that came out of the ocean and lay on a rock. This sea plant is nature's survival snack. It takes up little space, weighs almost nothing, and lasts practically forever. It's easy to store, easy to carry, and full of everything a body might lack during the long, frozen months when no plant dares grow above the snowline. Dried kelp may not be flashy, but it embodies the same traits found in every food on this list: adaptability, resourcefulness, and respect for the environment. It's the quiet workhorse of the Inuit diet, always there, always ready, never spoiled. With the land, sea, and ice providing such a reliable menu of preserved foods, it's no wonder the Inuit could thrive where most would struggle to survive. But there's one more truth that ties all these never-expiring foods together. 10 foods, each wildly different, yet all sharing the same trait: they never expire. In the frozen expanse of the Arctic, where mistakes can be fatal and help is measured in days, not minutes, the Inuit built a food system that laughs in the face of time. From rendered seal oil to dried kelp, every item in their pantry has been chosen, crafted, and stored with survival in mind. These aren't just clever recipes. They're the legacy of people who learned to treat nature not as an obstacle, but as an ally. The wind that dries fish becomes a tool. The cold that slows bacteria becomes a partner. The fat that modern diets fear becomes fuel for another day. And the foods we call strange, they were, and still are, life preservers. Fermented walrus meat, aged caribou strips, oil-drenched berries. Each one tells a story of necessity turned into knowledge. None of these foods came about by accident. They were the result of generations of trial, error, observation, and an uncanny ability to adapt to a place most of us could hardly imagine calling home. But maybe what's most remarkable isn't just that these foods last. It's that the knowledge behind them has lasted too. Even today, in modern Inuit packaged foods have crept in. These traditions endure, not just out of nostalgia, but because they still work. They still feed people. They still save lives when planes can't land and boats can't break through the ice. And they still connect generations through shared rituals: rendering, drying, burying, and boiling, carried out in snow-covered silence and passed on through stories around seal oil lamps. You won't find most of these foods in supermarkets. There are no expiration dates stamped on a strip of dried Arctic char or a loaf of brick-hard Banic, and yet they're safer and more enduring than many items sitting in shiny packaging on your shelves right now. Perhaps there's a lesson here, not just about food, but about perspective. In a world obsessed with fast, fresh, and now, the Inuit way reminds us that old isn't bad, that slow isn't inefficient, and that the best innovations don't always require technology. Sometimes they require listening, watching, and learning from the land itself. Because when everything freezes, when supplies run low, and when your world is made of ice and silence, it's not just about what you eat, it's about what you know. And that knowledge, like the foods it produced, is built to last.